Hello and welcome to our next interview in the Beyond Boundaries series. And today I am joined by yet again another very special friend, a gentleman I've got to know. I don't know, it's been a good few years, right, Hilario?
That's right. That's right.
So what do we have? We have the president of BOXX LATAM, I believe, and the
Correct.
chairman of LATAM Insurtech, Hilario Itriago. Have I said your surname? I don't think I've ever said your surname.
Well done. That's good because nobody actually does, and everybody actually tries for the first time, and they do a great job. So well done.
Good. Well, thanks. I'll take it. All right. Look, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, but it really is. So I want to dive into a bunch of stuff, right? So we had BOXX featured in one of our top 50 rankings for Americas a couple of years back. So let's deep dive into the progress, where you guys are at, your focus and role, and I imagine there's a whole ton of stuff that overlaps with also your role as chair of the organization that you set up, right? Was InsurTech LATAM. So, are you happy to explore both worlds?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good man. Let's start with the BOXX. Where are you guys at, right? So I think we featured you probably a couple of years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago. Give us a quick update, snapshot, and then your role within BOXX.
Absolutely. So BOXX is a great story, right? Vishal Kundi, a great friend, one of the co-founders. We're both ex-RSA, so the old Royal and Sønr Alliance. We're both alumni of that. Very proud of it, and we joined in 2021. He asked me to join BOXX, and at that moment, BOXX was a Canadian MGA. That was the best description we could have. They were doing it for about 2 to 3 years already, as a Lloyd's cover holder, focus on cyber. That great story around prevention and protection. But Vish had these great ambitions of going international, and rightly so. You were companies like Coalition and at Bay and others down south of the border, and he was looking from a distance, saying, why can't I go into the big market? So I joined in 2021. We quickly learned the US is a big market, way bigger than we all thought, complex, et cetera, et cetera. We were fortunate enough that we actually had our Series A with Zurich. That was great. So fast forward 22, 23, BOXX USA grew tremendously, which, I was leading at the time. We decided that we were going to distribute our SME products through wholesale channels, which we still do. And we had this great consumer product with Hartford Steam Boiler, which we still do for individuals and families. So we had the round product. That allowed us to grow very well, very nicely, steady, and reach a good number of partnerships that have also given us a tremendous positioning in the market, not necessarily exactly as our competitors, but a little bit more diversified. In parallel to that, BOXX equally started going into new markets with colleagues of mine in Asia, Middle East, also in Europe. We have a very diversified team. There's a large group in Toronto and in Canada, but there's also a large group now outside, and we're in different places. Our CMO is based in Zurich, Switzerland. We have a team in Spain, team in Latin America. So all in all, we've actually built a very nice company, very well structured around our convictions of how to grow in different markets. And ultimately what that led to was 3 years down the line, at the end of last year, with the US now steadily growing, we decided to hire new talent, local US talent, to grow the team, led by Kristen Yost. So I decided, okay, now that we've got to that point, why don't we just naturally look into Latin America? My backyard in terms of I'm Venezuelan by origin. I've worked there for a number of years in different countries, and I'm based in Miami. So that worked really well. So I'm now focused into the LATAM market. We're looking at great opportunities there with our prevention platform and product, and so that's where we're at.
Yep, love it. Well, congrats on the journey. It sounds like it sounds like You're tracking well, right? Which is not always the case for lots of these tech businesses out there. But I think also it must be really fun, right? Just being part of that. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit ahead of the call, right? Having clients all around the world, having team around the world, and just having that very kind of global footprint. And it leads us on to the LATAM conversation neatly, of course, because setting up the LATAM kind of focus as a side role, a side gig, it's a separate world, but actually the two are now beautifully aligned, right? I'm sure your knowledge of that local market with your focus right now. When did you set up LATAM Insurtech?
So the story there is I left RSA in 2016. Right. I was the regional CEO at the time. The group in London at that moment and the global CEO decided we're going to focus on mature markets. So LATAM was one of the largest in the emerging markets. That business got sold to Suramericana, which is a very large Colombian conglomerate, well known. And, I went to my first Insurtech Connect in Vegas at the end of 2016, which probably you were there as well, which you didn't know each other. Half of the room was talking about Insurtech. The other half of the room didn't know whether it was with an E or without an E. It was like, what the heck?
That debate still exists.
I know that. But, it was kind of a shocking moment. Like, what's going on here? This looks like it has some legs. So I decided I'm going to participate into that. I think this is a great moment. Not because technology was new to insurance, but because technology could be part of the insurance business. Yeah. And so we actually started at that time a company that was a precursor of LATAM Insurtech that worked very closely with Chubb. At the time, Gabriel Lázaro was in Latin America. Yeah, sure. Back then, he was working on Chubb Digital, the beginnings of Chubb Studio. And so we decided, okay, why don't we collaborate here? We kind of scout, you guys build your thing, and then we always kind of share with each other how things go. And so, fast forward a number of years, and we then realize, well, we don't want to be a venture capital firm. We're not that. We don't have experience in that, so let's not do that. We do know the ecosystem. We know what's going on. We work with people who know what's happening, and there's a number of great collaborations in the region. Why don't we just do an accelerator? Why don't we just say, if InsurTech is real and it's helpful to the insurance industry, let's accelerate the pace at which these solutions can actually come to market, and then collaboration happens naturally. So that was the genesis of it. Is obviously something that I'm involved as chairman of the board, but Pablo Tiscornia, who's one of our managing director, leads that every day, and he does a phenomenal job at it. But allows us to have visibility around who's doing what's working, what's not working. And then when you have these conversations, as part of my main role at BOXX, you equally know what's going on in the wider spectrum of things, and that's very helpful.
100%. Yeah, super interesting. Let's dive into some of what is working and what is not working in a second. But tell me how is the business accelerator set up? How does it work, right? Because there are a bunch of different models out there, all under the same label of an accelerator, right?
Yeah. So what we decided we were going to do was we were going to call all insurtechs that were beyond a napkin and beyond a PowerPoint. We said, if you have a real business going on and you want the ability to be showcased through the program, learn through the program, and then with that, grow your business, whether it's in your market or beyond your market, with what the connections of the program can make, you're up for this. So it's a 12-week program that basically is mentorship based. And what we do is we select 20 for every cohort. We're in our third cohort now. We've completed. We set aside, or the program has $100,000 every year to invest in or position as part of the accelerator, not necessarily having to invest all $100,000 in it, because if some of them are great, then we invest or we place the accelerator investment. If not, then there's no money to it. So now that we're in 3 cohorts, basically what happens is the 5 finalists that go into the final pitch are eligible for parts of that 100K. In the first cohort, all 5 actually were very good. In the second cohort, 2 were really good. And in this last cohort, 1 or 2 are really good as well.
Yeah.
So the beauty of that is it allows us to diversify, not for the benefit of the accelerator, but for the benefit of the region, because we take into consideration geographical location, segment of focus, line of business, and their ability to work with the incumbent ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that's what everybody wants to do: improve, the traditional space. So that's how it works.
Where does 100,000 come from?
So the LATAM Insurtech Accelerator is a partner of a company called 4Years Capital. They provide the capital. The accelerator runs the entire program, and then collectively, that's assigned.
Yeah, wonderful. And so let's then step into what you're seeing through the accelerator, because I think it's super interesting, right? So themes, trends, technologies. How has that evolved or changed, and where you're at currently?
That's a great question, because it has evolved over time, right?
Sure.
First cohort, everybody wanted to be distribution. Everybody was a digital broker. Everybody wanted to do direct to consumer. Everybody, wanted to be in that space. Everybody wanted to do motor or pay as you go or that kind of thing. And listen, very, very valid value propositions, very interesting, very powerful. The reality is that we've seen over the last 3 years that has changed into more niche line of businesses. Like, we went from pay as you drive to marine and transportation.
Sure. That's a great example. Yeah.
Right. We've gone from traditional coverages with technology to actually great technology with innovative coverages, parametric, things of that nature. We've also gone from very little non-distribution, so very little claims management, very little service, to actually some really good assistance products for consumers and corporates, and some very interesting products also on, ultimately the last cohort, AI, right?
Yeah,
AI becoming an enabler of efficiencies as opposed to, a tool for more growth or more distribution. So I think we've seen an inevitable maturity in how people are seeing that they can actually contribute to the ecosystem at very different components of the value chain, which I think is what we want. We want the richness of every segment being benefited.
What about, you mentioned geographies? What about so again, I'm talking at such a distant view where LATAM for me is just a huge, great, big, diverse bunch of countries, right, that make up this space. I'm assuming there are particular countries that are more developed than others that therefore have a greater maturity of innovation, and therefore is that the truth? Are there particular hotspots that you guys are seeing innovation coming from, and less so from others?
It's an interesting question, because of course, if you talk to anybody from any of the countries I'm going to mention, they'll say their hotspot is the greatest, sure, as a natural, right? But the interesting thing is that we have 2 very large markets in Brazil and Mexico. We have a region where it's mostly Spanish speaking, with the exception of Brazil, and because Brazil is so big, it has its own ecosystem.
Yeah,
actually. So when you think of Spanish-speaking insurtechs, whether they start in a small market or in a big market, they all want to go into other markets that are, similar to theirs. So, for example, insurtechs from Chile and Peru, they are typically more comfortable going into Colombia and Mexico. Call it the pan American kind of route, for want of a better word. Why? Because there's a lot of similar lines of business and penetration, even though Chile is quite ahead of other markets, being a small one. Equally, you have now some regulation that kind of is following each other. So in many ways, it's easier to do that. And you have some great associations in the region, as you know, that are making these soft landings a lot easier. We spoke about Oscar Garza, who's the president of the Association of Insurtechs in Mexico. They're making it super easy for anybody who wants to go to Mexico to actually land there. And so I would say that the hotspots in terms of market size are Brazil and Mexico. The hotspots in terms of maturity would be Chile and Argentina. There's a lot of entrepreneurship innovation there beyond insurance, I would say, in general. In Argentina is massive, but if you think of insurtechs, Klimber is a great success story from Argentina now going into many countries. And then you have a great fintech and insurtech collaboration happening in Colombia, as well as in Mexico, with companies like Rappi doing a lot more insurance and having a partnership with Chubb. And then that point is not a small one. Very large incumbents, not many, but some already really betting from some time ago into we can deliver traditional products and innovative products with innovative companies. And that might be fintech, insurtech, or a mix of both working together. So I think that makes the region quite exciting in terms of, the dynamics of how it's working.
Yeah. No, super interesting. And because we were talking beforehand. So I had hence Oscar being mentioned is they invited me over to keynote at their event towards the end of last year. And there was definitely an observation from my perspective around the maturing kind of carrier kind of innovation awareness, maybe, or adoption of external vendors, whether it's insurtechs or fintechs or scale-up startups, whatever we're labeling them as. Again, do you see kind of, and whether it's from a BOXX perspective and your relationships with the likes in the market, or it's from your accelerator perspective, does that kind of maturity of adoption, whether it's open innovation or venture clienting, this desire to work with this external ecosystem to move from A to B a little bit quicker and more successfully, does that change on a geography basis as well?
Well, the interesting thing about Latin America in particular, whether it's with BOXX or any of the accelerator ecosystem partners, people are super willing to listen and to talk about new opportunities. We're hot-blooded. There's always this joke that you can get into a bus in Mexico City, and by the time you actually get off, you've told your life story to some random individual that was next to you, right? Everybody's super willing to talk and share and all that, and that helps a great deal, because even though you may not end up doing business right away, people have you in their radar, or in their Sønr, as I should say.
There you go.
So the beauty of that is that ultimately you end up actually getting into conversations that you weren't anticipating. And also those conversations lead you into markets that you probably weren't planning to discuss. And so the Caribbean, to give you an example, Central America and the Caribbean is quite a very interesting innovation belt. It doesn't make as much noise as the big markets by virtue of the fact that the nature of those are small countries. But when you go in there, you realize what's actually being done. You realize that it's on par, or sometimes even more advanced than many major economies. And so when it comes to BOXX, I'm having conversations with as many people as I can. When it comes to cyber, I'm having conversations with any kind of bank, any kind of institution, any kind of insurance company that is willing to listen as to how can we be very complementary to their existing products,
Yeah.
home portfolios. Isn't it cyber a great product to actually put and complement your home coverages, right? Why? Because in any country, in anywhere in the world, there's at least 3 devices connected to the cloud. It doesn't matter, social economic standards or whatever. So that is allowing us to then reach customers that we weren't necessarily planning originally. And that's allowing insurtechs to really expose themselves quite faster than they would have done 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, super interesting. And I'm assuming, just like any business, right, you have to think about your go-to-market strategy is going to be slightly different for a LATAM approach, or even a kind of geography by geography, as well as your pricing structure and the rest, right? I was just thinking, even the example you gave me, but it can work, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and also it gives you a good sense of opportunity in terms of the product construct. What you might be offering, and I'll give you an example. One of those companies in the accelerator, Sønr Logistics, right? They started in Peru. This digital broker for marine and transportation. Great idea, great company. All of a sudden, they go to Mexico and they find that there's an opportunity to do a parametric product there.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't necessarily occur to them in their home market, but it became an opportunity in an expanding market. So that in itself is really helpful, because then you go, okay, what else can I do, and where next?
Yeah.
And it might not be the traditional route that you might have had in mind, but the opportunities are there for the taking. So they actually go and take advantage of that.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, look, I hope part of the Beyond Boundary study that we're doing and the interview for is we're going to be publishing a top 50 emerging businesses, as well as the top 50 established, from kind of the startup ecosystem lens. And as before, right, as we had BOXX featured within these, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to we will be looking at from a global perspective, and I hope that we're going to be seeing some great innovation coming through within that from the LATAM market. Last question to you, Hilario, is what's next for the accelerator, right? So let's paint the picture. We've got AI obviously sweeping the entries and for the cohort this time around. What's next? Where are you guys? Where are you looking to take things?
So we've had a tremendous relationship over the last 3-4 years with a number of organizations. Broker Tech Ventures from Iowa, Insurtech Israel with Kobe, Insurtech Ireland, So we are now thinking there's a great deal of opportunity to then expand what we are doing in LATAM, not necessarily by taking the accelerator to those geographies, because our partners are doing a great job there already, but to actually say which insurtechs that may or may not have been finalists in the accelerator, or may have not even participated in the accelerator, but are part of the ecosystem, are interested in expanding beyond LATAM. So, answering your question, what's next? We want to go beyond LATAM, but we want to go beyond LATAM by taking some of our innovation somewhere else into other regions, because we think it's on par with the best out there. We think we have an opportunity, given that in our region we're doing as good developments and as sophisticated for a lot less price than maybe in mature markets. So we're in an advantage there. And that network of partners allows us to kind of plant a seed here or there. And if we manage to do that in the next 3 years with a couple per year, then that would be a great success. So we're looking beyond LATAM. We're looking to expand our innovations through our partner network. And I think that's going to be a beautiful thing in general, because our partners can do the same with us.
Yeah, I was thinking that from a Sønr perspective, right? I mean, we have clients all around the world, but our reach is as far as Mexico. We have a client, and then it stops, right? And of course, our global clients have that South American footprint, and we do lots of projects in Europe on behalf of and also the States, right, on behalf of their South American divisions who tend to then be represented there. But why on earth are we as a business not proactively exploring the market? And I think that connection through whether it's the Insurtech Ireland, Israel, others, I think is the perfect route. Super cool. And then what's next for BOXX? Let's we started with BOXX. Let's finish with BOXX. So bigger and better in LATAM than ever. I'm assuming it's just growth, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're super excited about our positioning in Latin America. We think that our model of predict, prevent, insure is quite powerful. It lends itself to have a conversation, as I was telling you earlier, about insurance, and the business that we're in, which is insurance, but at the same time coupled with the prevention element, which is so important for cyber as a coverage, right? It's so universal. You want to make sure that customers are aware of how exposed they might be with our prevention tools and platforms, and at the same time be able to say, in the event that you actually need it, you have this insurance. And by the way, it's very different. And I can tell you, back when we were starting, years ago, it's very different to tell the story when you're starting and you're talking out of conviction. Now being able to talk out of conviction plus experience is a beautiful thing. Right? Yeah. And so our ability to do that today in LATAM is a phenomenal opportunity, and I'm super excited. And we're already having great conversations. So,
yeah, I love it. Good luck. Look, Hilario, a big thanks. I've got no doubt. I haven't asked this beforehand, but I'm sure the answer is going to be yes. I'm going to be seeing you at ITC Vegas in October, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll be 100%.
There. For sure. Okay, good. Well, hopefully you can maybe join us on stage. We've got a 90-minute session on the Wednesday to launch the report. So hopefully, you'll be there in person, and we can do something fun together.
You can come in there. Absolutely.
Good, man. All right. Well, look, lovely catching up. Thank you for your time. And best of luck with both the Accelerator and BOXX. And pleasure. Until October.
Phenomenal. See you there. Thank you so much, man.